Welcome to the Deep Dive Curious Minds. Today we're plunging into something, well, truly extraordinary. It's a source claiming to be a government whistleblower's decades-long expose. We're talking hidden projects, altered realities, and some, frankly, profoundly unsettling visions for our future.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to navigate this unique narrative. The source itself explicitly says it's, quote, not fiction nor true. It says it's a mix of things which happened and things which almost happened, things which were and things which could have been. So we'll explore its layers of frankly bizarre government experimentation, this mind-bending concept of flesh interfaces, interdimensional travel, and it all culminates in a pretty stark warning for humanity. So yeah, prepare for some truly wild claims, surprising details too.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this unusual source then. We're looking at journals. Self-proclaimed government whistleblower claims 80 years of experience. And these journals were supposedly hacked, leaked, and then reworked with a group called the Paranoid Time Artifact Society. That's quite a name. What's his stated core purpose in sharing all this stuff?
Well, his stated purpose is simple yet profound: to reveal something you need to know. He grounds his insights in what he calls his own intellectual mutations, which he claims came from repeated self-experimentation with LSD. He believes this fractured his brain's time state, allowing him to exist, between various paths which didn't happen.
Wow.
And this, he says, gives him special insight into our possible futures. Futures he views as profoundly dark. It immediately sets a very, very particular tone for everything else.
It certainly does, a strange tone. But, okay, his claims about the CIA's MURI project, they take an even more unsettling turn, don't they? He suggests it wasn't just about dosing individuals. What's this new, frankly bizarre twist?
Right. The claim is the CIA went way beyond just dosing individuals. They supposedly created entire new departments within the agency itself, and these departments were fed steady doses of LSD and other psychoactive substances.
The whole department?
The whole department. The idea apparently was to see how they would diverge and mutate away from normal collective behavior. This heavily psychomutated hierarchy, according to the source, then led to the creation of what he calls restraint bed portals and flesh interfaces. And while the entire MURA project was reportedly eliminated later, the technology it inadvertently created that was deemed revolutionary.
Revolutionary tech born from drug departments.
Okay.
And this mind-altering approach, it apparently extended beyond the CIA to places like Vietnam. How does he connect LSD and these flesh interfaces to that conflict?
Well, the source alleges that during the U.S. government's strategic Hamlet program in Vietnam, where they isolated villages, strange things started happening. Messianic or millenarian movements spring up. But more specifically, he claims that in 16 separate incidents, these isolated villages were somehow able to independently invent flesh interfaces and non-electrical portals.
Independently?
He surmises it was because these villages were being collectively dosed with LSD for long periods of time, which led to their own collective intellectual mutations, similar to his own experience, but on a community scale. These Vietnamese flesh interfaces were eventually destroyed by the North Vietnamese army, but apparently at a terrible cost in lives.
That's a truly disturbing claim.
Okay.
And following this pattern, the Soviets seem to have had their own version.
Yeah.
With grim results. Tell us about these harvest populations in Ukraine.
Yes, according to this account, the Soviets designated large portions of the Ukraine countryside as harvest populations.
Right.
Their food and water supplies were systematically dosed with LSD until the populations achieved what the source calls integration.
Integration meaning?
Meaning they, too, independently invented flesh interfaces.
Yeah.
The Soviet army would then quarantine these areas and attempt to remove the interfaces for their own study and use. Usually, the source claims this resulted in great loss of life. And what's particularly chilling is the description of soldiers and scientists involved getting segmented.
Segmented? What does that mean exactly?
Essentially cut cleanly in half, or missing limbs. But the disturbing part is they could live for quite some time despite segmentation. This, he claims, led the Soviets to mistakenly believe their missing parts still existed, just relocated via interdimensional relocation.
Segmented but alive. That's okay. So these flesh interfaces, they're central to all this. How does the whistleblower actually describe them? Because you mentioned he explicitly states he can't define their purpose or composition.
Exactly. He can't define what they are, only the phenomena associated with them. Chief among these is the creation of an incident zone. This is an area where objects are, quote, spontaneously segmented, parts just disappear.
Mind of a soldier.
Right. But the objects continue to behave as if the missing parts are still present. Imagine, like, a car driving perfectly fine, but its back half is just gone. Other phenomena include complex underground tunnel systems, he calls them ant farms, and in undersea interfaces, he mentions these chitinous cruciform organisms described as swiginous organisms thought to be non-terrestrial in origin.
Non-terrestrial.
Okay.
Okay. And giant metallic cylinders, too.
Yes, those come up repeatedly. Giant metallic cylinders often seen near these interfaces.
Among these many strange claims, there's a really stark one about a major city today. What's he allege about Dubai?
Yeah, the source claims Dubai has the highest rate of free-floating non-interface incidents anywhere, incidents without a clear interface present. He recounts one really horrifying story. A large group of migrant workers segmented cleanly in half in some underground facility, and you could apparently see their lungs working, food being digested, blood pumping. They reportedly lived for almost 5 months in this condition.
5 months. Segmented. That's hard to even imagine.
It is. And another involves school children who were very slightly segmented. They all died within 2 months, and some apparently showed signs of intellectual mutation. The whistleblower theorizes that maybe Dubai's unique architecture itself might be based on interface geometry, carrying some kind of latent effect.
Wow. Okay, so this leads us to time portals. How do they fit in with the flesh interfaces?
A portal is basically described as a large flush interface, but also something more. As the name suggests, it's a way to send objects between the portal site and other distant locations. He calls these alien sister cities. These portals are typically accompanied by those large, fluctuating metallic cylinders we mentioned, and they can get much larger when a portal is active. The source isn't sure if the cylinders are artifacts sent through the portals or phenomena created by the interfaces themselves.
Right, ambiguity there. And there's a truly harrowing account of one specific portal, isn't there? The Novia portal in the Arctic.
Yes, this one is presented as a major crisis. The source says the Soviets may be responding to a supposed CIA station in Antarctica, built a larger station in the Arctic. Using 30,000 prisoners and an exceptionally pure gas concentration, they apparently created a flesh interface. But it escalated incredibly fast, becoming a full-fledged portal in less than 13 minutes.
13 minutes?
Yeah. And those metallic cylinders became miles high, extending into the sky. The portal grew out of control. Its incident zone, the area of effect, expanded to the edge of space, which apparently made conventional attacks impossible. So the Soviets then feverishly constructed a hydrogen bomb of unprecedented power. They detonated it with supposedly only 2 hours to spare. The whistleblower claims the world came within 2 hours of being subjected to an uncontrolled flesh interface and perhaps the end of civilization as we know it. He frames it as a near apocalypse.
An H-bomb to close a portal. Okay, so before this Novia portal was collapsed, someone went through and came back. This brings us to the experiences of traveling to these sister cities. Tell us about Lisa's dream. What stands out there?
Lyasa, described as a 9-year-old girl, was supposedly sent through the Groom Lake interface in 1975. The destination was a sister city called the Hanging Temples. Now, she stayed for what was 5 days in our time, but only experienced 48 seconds of beyond time, a huge time discrepancy.
48 seconds for 5 days.
Right. She apparently recalled nothing upon returning, just felt drowsy. But then she recounted this vivid dream just before dying later that same day. Her dream was unsettling. Purple clouds, an orange sky, big fireflies, and people sleeping not in caves, they were buried under the hills, packed together like, quote, a pregnant woman's stomach.
Buried under hills.
Yeah. And then her grandma was sucked into the ground with her voice calling out from inside, and the source adds this chilling note. We have seen the same clouds at CERN.
Okay, the involvement of children in these experiments is incredibly disturbing. Does the whistleblower address why they used children?
He does try to explain it, though it's obviously deeply unethical. He outlines the different approaches. Americans apparently used military men initially. The Soviets, using Gulag prisoners, had a wider age range, and this, he claims, allowed them to discover an essential correlation, which was, the younger a person was, the more likely they were to survive travel, and the longer they would survive after travel. Teenagers apparently fared even better than people in their early 20s.
So younger meant better survival rates through these things.
That's the claim, and despite acknowledging all moral compunction, the source states it was only after the first round of children went through that they gained any idea of what was on the other side. He compares the ethical compromises made to historical decisions, like dropping the atom bomb on Hiroshima, implying a sort of desperate, pragmatic, ends justify the means rationale.
That's a heavy comparison. And the whistleblower's own alleged experience from Vietnam.
Yeah.
That ties into this, right? With an encased subject. What happened to Jingles?
Jingles. This is a really grim and quite graphic detail. Jingles, an 8-year-old girl, was apparently sent into a flesh interface during the Vietnam conflict. 2 minutes later, an object returned. Not Jingles, but an object. It was described as a large organic sac lined with veins, vaguely resembling a human lung, about 4 feet long. Yeah, and inside they found Jingles, naked and covered with blood with no hair on her head. There was an umbilical cord attaching her to a placenta that was supposedly an LSD factory, pumping out a particular blend that made people pretty violent. Her skin was described as flawless, like a newborn's, and MRIs apparently showed her bone plates were still highly undeveloped, as if she was newborn, which led them to ask, is this really Jingles or some kind of clone?
A clone grown in a sack, pumping LSD. And her mind, was it still Jingles? Or was she altered?
Well, initially she behaved like an infant, but within hours she seemed to progress through the various stages of development, her awareness, her sentence structure. It became more and more sophisticated very rapidly. Crucially, she knew her name and her past, which implied she had the same mind as the original.
So they asked her what she saw.
Yes. When they finally asked, what did you see? What's on the other side? Jingles apparently grew thoughtful. Her reply, just before she simply stopped living and sat there dead, was, inside the chamber, I started to feel drowsy. Then everything changed. A and D. I knew what I saw. I had seen it before. I said to myself, this is like the room in Graham's house, the quiet room. And her very final words were, come into these yellow sands.
The quiet room, yellow sands. Incredibly cryptic. And the whistleblower quit after this.
He claims he quit the program that day. It's presented as a breaking point for him.
Understandable. This whole narrative, it seems, framed by this desperate quest for power, maybe, or survival at any cost. The whistleblower tries to explain the cruelty, the extreme experiments, by shifting perspective to the Japanese in late 1944. What was the context he describes?
Right, so the source tries to frame some of the motivation behind this kind of extreme research. He describes Japan in late 1944 facing inevitable and total defeat, feeling, quote, punished by our own sense of dignity, their inability to admit inevitable and total defeat. So they were desperately searching for anything, divine intervention, basically, clinging to old stories of miraculous typhoons saving them. And then news started arriving from Germany about the American atom bomb, yes, but also that a Swiss scientist had synthesized a chemical, LSD, capable of fusing parts of the mind, allowing for incredible insights. Teams working under its influence were supposedly inventing techniques and devices previously unheard of. This offered a sliver of desperate, almost magical hope.
And this leads to a truly wild claim about LSD experiments at the Treblinka extermination camp, doesn't it?
It does. This one is particularly, well, out there. The source alleges that experiments at Treblinka involved prisoners being given LSD for months, and the results were supposedly so impressive that they convinced the camp leaders to take it too.
Camp leaders taking LSD with prisoners.
That's the claim. Soon, he says, the entire camp hierarchy was taking the drug and working together on a new device. A destructive radar, supposedly powerful enough to slice bombers right in half. The whistleblower himself admits this sounds utterly fantastical. His words, Nazi death camp commanders working side by side with Jewish prisoners to invent a magical radar.
Yeah.
End quote. But he explains this extreme claim by, again, referencing the absolute desperation of the Japanese. They needed anything that might turn the tide. And this desperation, he says, led to a large supply of LSD crystals being brought to Japan by submarine in late 1944. He concludes that part lamenting, we were looking for divine grace. What we found was a hell beyond our darkest dreams of destruction.
A hell beyond dreams. So after hearing all these astonishing, often horrifying claims, what does it all mean for us, the listener? How does the whistleblower actually frame the truth of this whole account? It's clearly not history class.
Right, and this is absolutely key.
Okay.
His explicit statement is, this information is not fiction. Nor is it true. He says, it is a mix of things which happened and things which almost happened, things which were and things which could have been. He sees the present moment, right now, as a kind of nexus from which trillions of possible past and possible futures branch out.
Trillions of possibilities.
Exactly. And his ultimate goal, he states, is that by examining what might have been, we can come to understand what might come to be. He's specifically writing about what has never been and what must never be. So it's less a factual record and much more a conceptual warning built from these alleged experiences and possibilities.
Which leads directly to his incredibly dire warning about the future. He paints a very bleak picture for humanity, doesn't he?
Oh, yes. It gets very dark here. He believes that technological advances in the field of information technology and bioengineering will fundamentally reshape human existence. And the result? an unending era of absolute slavery. He claims, and this is staggering, that 99.999% of all trillions of possible futures result in this outcome.
99.999%. That's almost certainty.
It's presented as near inevitability. And this new totalitarianism, he warns, will have an unprecedented ability to envelop the entire Earth and place humanity in an unalterable state of total mental and physical slavery. And chillingly, he warns that humanity's very instincts towards the preservation of freedom and life will be precisely what leads to this destruction. He calls these precarious times.
And amidst all this, he makes very personal, self-deprecating remarks about his own credibility. It's an odd mix.
It is. He's very aware of how this all sounds. He admits to megalomania, states he's not a prophet or an expert, describes himself as just an 80-something American male without the benefit of a stable job, who's in hiding and has spent most of my life drunk.
Quite the resume for a whistleblower.
Indeed. He acknowledges his videos will contain a number of historical errors, as well as bad spelling, bad grammar, and laughably overwrought prose. Slight chuckle overwrought prose, maybe? Yet despite all that, he insists that his personally experienced intellectual mutations from the repeated LSD use still give him this special insight into these dark futures. And he expresses a fear that his current state, what he calls productive mania, will eventually decay into unproductive psychosis.
So, despite undermining himself, he's essentially saying, trust me, we're hurtling towards a future singularity, where all species are reintegrated to a new and singular form, a new abomination.
That's the essence of it. And he concludes with this truly unsettling vision, humanity being gathered again into the arms of the mother to become one flesh with her. The mother who gathers lost children, the mother I have seen in dark spaces since I was a little child, back when I called her the mother with horse eyes. We are about to meet her again. We are about to be unborn. And his final words in the account are, "Stay paranoid, my friends." It's an incredibly unsettling definitive end, blurring prophecy and nightmare.
Wow. Well, that was certainly quite a journey into the truly bizarre and unsettling. From LSD-fueled government departments to villages inventing flesh interfaces, from the near end of civilization via an Arctic portal to those terrifying details about child subjects and their cryptic final words, this deep dive has been a wild ride through one whistleblower's reality-bending account.
It really has. And this deep dive, it really forces you, doesn't it, to grapple with the nature of information itself, belief, and, well, the unsettling possibilities of human experimentation and its consequences. Even when it's presented through such an unorthodox, maybe unreliable lens, it makes you consider how easily desperation, perhaps, or maybe just insatiable curiosity, how easily that can lead us to explore concepts that really challenge our understanding of reality, ethics, and indeed, what might have been or maybe what might still come to be.
We hope this deep dive into the truly unconventional has given you some new, maybe surprising insights to think about.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. If, as the source suggests, what might have been can show us what might come to be, what unrecognized flesh interfaces or portals might already be emerging in our own world, hidden in plain sight, potentially reshaping our future right now without us even realizing it.